What if I told you that a single glance across a crowded coffee shop could change everything? That one moment of eye contact could unravel years of certainty about who you are and what you want? Today, I'm sharing a story that proves sometimes the most unexpected encounters lead to the most profound transformations. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and let me take you on a journey that will make you question everything you thought you knew about love, identity, and the courage to be true to yourself. My name is David, and until 3 months ago, I thought I had my life perfectly mapped out. 28 years old, successful marketing executive, engaged to Sarah, a beautiful woman who checked every box on my carefully constructed list of what a perfect partner should be. We had the house, the plans, the future everyone expected us to have. But life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. It was a Tuesday morning in downtown Seattle. I was running late for a client meeting, rushing through the morning crowd with my phone pressed to my ear, trying to manage 3 different crises at once. The rain had just stopped, leaving that fresh, clean smell in the air that Seattle is famous for. I needed caffeine desperately, so I ducked into being there, a small coffee shop I'd never noticed before, tucked between a bookstore and a vintage clothing boutique. The place was packed with the usual morning rush crowd, business people checking emails, students with laptops, freelancers claiming corner tables. I joined the line, tapping my foot impatiently, checking my watch every few seconds. That's when I saw him. He was behind the counter, moving with this incredible efficiency and grace. Tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair that looked like he'd run his fingers through it and somehow made it look perfectly tousled. He was wearing a simple black t-shirt and jeans, nothing fancy. But there was something about the way he carried himself. Confident, comfortable in his own skin in a way that I envied immediately. But it was his eyes that stopped me cold. When he looked up from the espresso machine and our gazes met across the crowded shop, I felt something I'd never experienced before. It wasn't just attraction, though God knows he was attractive. It was like recognition. Like my soul had been waiting my entire life for this exact moment. What was happening to me? I was engaged. I was straight. I had never looked at a man this way in my life. He held my gaze for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few seconds. Then he smiled, not the professional customer service smile, but something warmer, more personal. Something that sent a jolt of electricity straight through my chest. Next, called the barista at the register, snapping me back to reality. I ordered my usual, large black coffee, no frills, but I couldn't stop stealing glances at the man behind the espresso machine. I noticed everything about him. The way his forearms flexed when he worked the machine, the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way he bit his lower lip when he was concentrating. When my coffee was ready, he was the one who called out my name. David. The way he said it, like he was testing how it fell on his tongue, made my stomach flip. I walked over to collect my drink, and when our fingers brushed as he handed me the cup, I swear I felt sparks. Thanks. I managed to say, my voice coming out rougher than I intended. You're welcome, he replied. And there was something in his tone, something that made me think he'd felt that moment of contact too. I'm Alex, by the way. David, I said unnecessarily, since he'd just called my name. He laughed, and the sounds like music. I figured, it's on the cup. I felt heat creep up my neck. Right, of course. I'm usually more articulate than this. Rough morning, he asked, and I got the impression he was genuinely interested, not just making small talk, something like that. I glanced at my watch and realized I was now seriously late. I should probably go, he finished. But David, I turned back, heart hammering. I hope your day gets better. I practically floated out of that coffee shop, my mind reeling. What the hell had just happened? I was engaged to Sarah. We were getting married in 6 months. I didn't have time for whatever this was. And besides, nothing had actually happened. It was just coffee, just a friendly barista doing his job. But those eyes, that smile, the way my name sounded when he said it. I tried to focus on my meeting, but my mind kept drifting back to Alex, the way he'd looked at me, the warmth in his voice, the undeniable chemistry that had crackled between us in those few short minutes. That afternoon, Sarah called to discuss wedding planning. We spent an hour going over seating charts and menu options, and the whole time I felt like I was living someone else's life. Like I was playing a role I'd memorized but never really understood. "You're quiet today," she observed when we were wrapping up the call. "Just work stuff." I lied. Nothing major. But it was major. It was huge. Because for the first time in my life, I was questioning everything I thought I knew about myself. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every moment of my encounter with Alex, analyzing every word, every glance, every heartbeat of connection. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, just a moment of curiosity, but I knew I was lying to myself. The next morning, I told myself I wouldn't go back to being there. I'd find another coffee shop. I'd avoid temptation and confusion and get back to my normal, predictable life. But as I stood on the sidewalk at 8:47 a.m., there was only one place I wanted to be. What would you do? Would you walk away from something that felt this significant, this potentially life-changing? Or would you trust your instincts and see where they led you? I pushed open the door to being there, the little bell chiming overhead, and immediately scanned the space behind the counter. There he was, Alex, preparing someone's complicated latte order with the same focused intensity I'd noticed yesterday. When he looked up and saw me, his face lit up with genuine pleasure. Not just professional friendliness, real happiness that I was there. "David," he said, and again, the way he said my name made something warm unfurl in my chest. "Back for more punishment?" Something like that. I moved to the counter, trying to appear casual even though my heart was racing. "Same as yesterday, please." "Large black coffee, no personality," he said with a grin that told me he was teasing. "Excuse me?" "That's what we call it in the back. Black coffee, no add-ons, no personality." I felt my eyebrows rise. "Are you insulting my coffee preferences?" "Maybe a little." He started preparing my order, but kept talking. "What's your story, David? What makes a guy order the most boring coffee possible when he's surrounded by all these amazing options?" "Maybe I'm a boring guy," I said, surprising myself with a flirtatious edge in my voice. Alex paused in his coffee preparation and looked directly at me. I seriously doubt that. The intensity in his gaze made my breath catch. This was dangerous territory, and I knew it, but I couldn't seem to make myself care. "What makes you so sure?" I asked. Call it intuition. He handed me my coffee, our fingers touching again, and this time the contact lasted a beat longer than necessary. Besides, boring guys don't usually make me want to know their stories. There it was, out in the open, the acknowledgement that this wasn't just casual customer service. "What do you want to know?" I heard myself ask. Alex glanced around the busy coffee shop, then leaned slightly closer. "Everything. But this probably isn't the best place for that conversation." My pulse spiked. "No, probably not." "I get off at 3, he said quietly. "There's a park about 2 blocks from here. Volunteer park. If you want to continue this conversation somewhere less." "Public," I supplied. "Exactly. I should have said no. Should have made an excuse, taken my coffee, and never come back. Instead, I found myself nodding. "Okay, 3 o'clock. Volunteer park." His smile could have powered the entire city. "I'll see you there, David." I left the coffee shop in a daze, my mind spinning with the magnitude of what I just agreed to. I was going to meet Alex, alone, to talk, and probably, if I was being honest with myself, for whatever came after talking. The rest of the day crawled by at an agonizing pace. I tried to work, tried to focus on emails and reports and presentations, but my thoughts kept drifting to 3 o'clock, to Alex, to what I was about to do. Was I really going to do this? Was I really going to meet a man I barely knew? A man who made me question everything I thought I knew about myself? At 2:45, I found myself walking toward Volunteer Park, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. I had no idea what I was going to say, what I was going to do, what any of this meant. All I knew was that I had to be there. This is just the beginning of David's journey of self-discovery. What do you think will happen when he meets Alex at the park? Will he follow his heart or retreat to the safety of his planned life? The next part of this story gets even more intense, exploring the deep conversation that changes everything for David. But before we continue, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever experienced a moment of connection so powerful it made you question everything? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're enjoying the story, hit that like button to let me know you want to see where this goes. Part 2 is coming up right now. Volunteer Park was quieter than I expected for a Wednesday afternoon. A few dog walkers, some joggers, couples scattered across the grass, enjoying the rare Seattle sunshine. I found a bench near the reservoir and sat down, my hand shaking slightly as I checked the time on my phone. 2:58. What was I doing here? What was I hoping would happen? David. I looked up to find Alex approaching, and seeing him outside the context of the coffee shop hit me like a physical blow. He was wearing dark jeans and a gray sweater that hugged his lean frame perfectly. His hair was still slightly messy in that effortless way. And when he smiled, I felt that same jolt of electricity I'd experienced yesterday. "You came," he said, settling onto the bench beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something clean and woodsy that made me want to lean closer. I said I would. People say a lot of things. He turned to face me more fully, especially when they're confused. The directness of his statement caught me off guard. "What makes you think I'm confused?" Alex's expression grew gentle. "The wedding ring tan line on your finger. The way you looked at me yesterday, like you'd never seen anything like me before. The fact that you're here, even though every instinct is probably telling you to run." I looked down at my left hand, at the pale band of skin where my engagement ring usually sat. I'd taken it off that morning, without really thinking about it, acting on some instinct I didn't fully understand. "It's complicated," I said finally. "It always is." Alex leaned back against the bench. "You want to talk about it?" This was my chance to deflect, to change the subject, to keep things light and surface level. Instead, I found myself opening up to this virtual stranger in a way I'd never opened up to anyone. "I'm engaged," I said. "Her name is Sarah. She's perfect, actually. Beautiful, smart, successful. Everything I should want. But when I look at her, I don't feel..." I paused, struggling for the right words. "I don't feel what I felt when I looked at you yesterday." Alex nodded slowly. "How long have you been engaged?" 8 months. Weddings in 6 months. I ran my hands through my hair. "God, I can't believe I'm telling you this." "What else?" Alex asked gently. "There's more, isn't there?" He was right. There was more. Years of more. I've never, with men I mean, I've always dated women. Always assumed that's just how things were supposed to be. I looked at him directly for the first time since sitting down. But if I'm being completely honest, there have been moments, times when I caught myself looking, wondering. I always push those thoughts away. And now I'm sitting in a park with a man I met yesterday, feeling more alive than I have in years, and I have no idea what that means. Alex was quiet for a long moment, watching a couple walk by with their golden retriever. When he spoke, his voice was thoughtful. "Can I tell you something? I knew I was gay when I was 14. Came out to my parents when I was 16, dealt with all the drama that comes with that. Moved to Seattle for college, and never looked back." He glanced at me. "I'm 26 now, and I've dated enough guys to know when someone is genuinely interested versus just curious. And which one am I? That's what we're here to figure out, isn't it?" The honesty in his voice, the complete lack of judgment, made something inside me relax. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe properly. "Tell me about Sarah," Alex said. "What's she like?" The question surprised me. "Why do you want to know about her?" "Because she's part of your story. And if we're going to figure this out, I need to understand all of it." I thought about Sarah, beautiful, accomplished Sarah who planned our dates with the efficiency of a military operation and discussed our future with the same clinical precision she brought to her legal career. She's successful, partner track at her law firm. She has our entire future mapped out. The house we'll buy, the neighborhood we'll live in when we'll have kids, what schools they'll attend. I paused. She's everything my parents hoped I'd find. Everything society says I should want. But what do you want? The question hung in the air between us, loaded with possibility and danger. I don't know. I admitted. I thought I did. For 28 years, I thought I knew exactly who I was and what I wanted. Then I walked into a coffee shop and saw you, and suddenly nothing feels certain anymore. Alex reached over and placed his hand over mine on the bench. The contact was warm, comforting, and absolutely electric. That's not necessarily a bad thing, he said softly. Sometimes uncertainty means you're finally paying attention to what you really feel instead of what you think you should feel. His hand on mine felt so right, so natural, that I didn't pull away. Instead, I found myself turning my hand over so our palms were touching. "This is crazy," I whispered. Maybe it's the first honest thing you felt in a long time. We sat there in the afternoon sun, hands linked, not talking, just breathing in this moment of possibility. I studied his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way his eyelashes cast shadows on his cheeks, the small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Alex, yeah, what happens now?" He turned to look at me, his eyes serious. "That's up to you, David. I can't make this decision for you, but I can tell you this. Whatever you're feeling right now, it's real. And it's not going away just because it's inconvenient or complicated." He was right. I could feel it in my chest, this pull toward him that was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't just physical attraction, though there was plenty of that. It was deeper, like he saw parts of me I'd been hiding even from myself. "I should probably go," I said, but I made no move to stand up. "Probably," he agreed, but his thumb was now tracing small circles on my palm. "Sarah's coming over tonight. We're supposed to finalize the catering menu. Important stuff. Very important." I looked at him. "So, why don't I want to leave?" "Maybe because you're finally somewhere you want to be." The truth of that statement hit me like a physical blow. When was the last time I'd felt this present, this engaged with another person? When was the last time someone had looked at me and seen me, really seen me, instead of just seeing the role I was playing? Never. The answer was never. "David," Alex said quietly, "can I ask you something?" I nodded. "When you think about your future with Sarah, the wedding, the house, the kids, how does that make you feel?" I started giving the standard answer, the one I'd been giving myself for months. But something about the gentle patience in his voice made me stop and really think. "Tired," I said finally, "like I'm signing up for a performance that will last the rest of my life." And when you think about this, about us, about exploring whatever this is, I consider the question seriously. When I imagined spending more time with Alex, getting to know him, maybe touch him the way I want to touch him right now, how did that make me feel? Terrified, I admitted, but also alive. Alex squeezed my hand. "That's your answer right there. It's not that simple, isn't it?" Maybe it was. Maybe I'd been overcomplicating things, trying to fit myself into a life that looked right from the outside but felt wrong on the inside. "I don't know how to do this," I said. "I don't know how to be whatever this is." "You don't have to figure it all out today." "But David," he waited until I was looking at him. "You deserve to be happy, really happy, not just content or satisfied or meeting expectations. Happy." The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange that reflected off the reservoir. Other couples were starting to head home, back to their dinners and evening routines and normal, uncomplicated lives. "I should really go," I said again, this time with more conviction. "I know." But Alex didn't let go of my hand. "Will I see you tomorrow?" "I don't know. I need to think." "Of course you do." He brought our joined hands up and pressed a soft kiss to my knuckles. The gesture was so tender, so intimate, that it took my breath away. "But David, whatever you decide, make sure it's what you really want. Not what you think you should want. What you actually want." As I walked back to my car, my hand still tingling from his touch, I knew Alex was right about one thing. This feeling, whatever it was, wasn't going away. The question was, what was I going to do about it? That night, Sarah came over with fabric samples and catering menus spread across my dining room table like battle plans. She looked beautiful as always. Blonde hair perfectly styled, makeup flawless even after a 12-hour day at the firm. She was wearing the blue dress I'd once told her looked nice, and I realized with a start that she'd probably chosen it specifically for that reason. So I'm thinking the salmon for the main course. She was saying, checking items off her list with mechanical precision. It's elegant but not too adventurous. And the chicken option for people who don't like fish. Sounds good, I said, only half listening. My mind kept drifting to the park, to Alex's hand in mine, to the way he looked at me like I was the most interesting thing in his world. Sarah glanced up from her papers. You're being unusually agreeable tonight. Usually you have at least 3 opinions about everything. Usually. How many conversations between us started with that word? Usually you do this. Usually you say that. When had our relationship become a series of patterns and expectations? Just tired, I guess. She studied my face with the same analytical attention she brought to her legal cases. You've been distracted lately. Is everything okay at work? This was my opening. I could tell her about Alex, about the confusion and attraction and self-discovery. I could be honest about what I was feeling and what it might mean for us. Instead, I heard myself say, everything's fine, just the usual stress. Sarah nodded and returned to her lists, satisfied with my non-answer. And that, I realized, was part of the problem. She was satisfied with surface-level responses, with checking boxes and maintaining the appearance of a perfect relationship. When was the last time she'd pushed me to share something real? When was the last time I'd wanted to? David, are you even looking at these options? Sarah's voice had taken on that edge of irritation I'd been hearing more often lately. Sorry. Yes. The salmon looks great. She sighed. Sometimes I feel like I'm planning this wedding by myself. That's not true. Isn't it? When was the last time you had an opinion about anything wedding related? The flowers, the venue, the music. I've made every single decision. She was right, and we both knew it. I'd been sleepwalking through our engagement, letting her take charge because I couldn't muster the enthusiasm for details that should have mattered to me. I trust your judgment, I said weakly. That's not the same as being engaged in the process. David, this is supposed to be our wedding, not just mine. The word engaged hit differently tonight. Was I engaged in this process, in this relationship, in this life I was building? Or was I just going through the motions, following a script I'd never questioned? My phone buzzed with a text message. Without thinking, I glanced at it, and my heart jumped when I saw an unknown number. Hope you made it home safely. Take care of yourself. Alex, who's texting you? Sarah asked, noticing my expression. Just work stuff. The lie came easily, which bothered me more than I wanted to admit. Sarah gathered her papers with sharp, efficient movements. I think I should go. You're clearly not focused tonight, and we're not getting anywhere with this. Sarah, wait. She paused at the door, her hand on the handle. What's going on with you lately? You seem like you're somewhere else all the time. This was it. Another chance to be honest, to tell her I was questioning everything, to admit I'd met someone who made me feel things I'd never felt before. Nothing's going on. I'm just stressed about work. She studied my face for a long moment, and I saw something flicker in her eyes. Hurt, maybe, or disappointment. Okay, she said finally. But David, we need to talk soon. Really talk. This wedding is happening whether we're both invested in it or not. But the marriage that comes after, that requires both of us to show up. After she left, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at Alex's text message. The contrast between the two interactions couldn't have been starker. With Sarah, I felt like I was performing a role, saying the expected lines, maintaining a facade. With Alex, even in our brief exchanges, I felt seen and understood in a way that was both thrilling and terrifying. What did that mean? What was I supposed to do with that information? I found myself typing a response. Thank you. Today was unexpected. His reply came quickly. The best things usually are, sleep well, David. I stared at those words for a long time, imagining Alex on the other end of this conversation, maybe lying in his own bed, Maybe thinking about our afternoon in the park the same way I was. What would it be like to fall asleep next to him? To wake up and see his face first thing in the morning? To build a life with someone who made me feel this alive? The thoughts were dangerous, and I knew it. But for the first time in years, I was thinking about what I wanted instead of what I should want. The next morning, I stood outside being there at 8:30 a.m., knowing I was making a choice just by being there. I could have gone to any coffee shop in Seattle. I could have made coffee at home. Instead, I was here, drawn by something I was still afraid to name. Alex saw me through the window and smiled, not a professional barista smile, but something warmer, more personal. When I reached the counter, he was already preparing my order. Large black coffee, no personality, he said, but his eyes were twinkling. Actually, I heard myself say, "What would you recommend? Something with more personality?" Alex's eyebrows rose. "Feeling adventurous today? You have no idea. Maybe a little." He leaned forward conspiratorially. "I make a mean lavender latte. It sounds weird, but trust me, I'll try it." As he worked, I watched his hands, remembering how they felt holding mine yesterday. When he handed me the drink, our fingers brushed again, and I didn't pull away as quickly this time. "So," he asked after I'd taken a sip. The coffee was perfect, complex, floral, unlike anything I'd ever tried. "It's incredible. See? Sometimes it's worth stepping outside your comfort zone." The double meaning in his words wasn't lost on me. "Alex," I said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "About yesterday, having second thoughts, third and fourth thoughts. But also," I paused, gathering courage, "also thinking about when I could see you again." His smile was radiant. "I was hoping you'd say that. When you get off work." "Not until 7 tonight. But I have a break at 2, if you want to grab lunch." I should have said I couldn't. Should have made an excuse about work or meetings or responsibilities. Instead, I found myself nodding. "Where?" "There's a small cafe called Luna a few blocks from here. Quiet, private, good for conversations. I'll see you there at 2. As I left being there, my heart was racing with anticipation and terror in equal measure. I was crossing lines I'd never crossed before, making choices that felt both completely right and completely reckless. But for the first time in my adult life, I was choosing what I wanted instead of what was expected of me. The rest of the morning dragged by. I tried to focus on work, but every few minutes I found myself checking the time, counting down the hours until I'd see Alex again. When 1:45 finally arrived, I practically sprinted out of the office. Luna was exactly as Alex had described. Small, cozy, with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. I found a table in the back corner and waited, my stomach churning with nervous energy. When Alex walked in, still wearing his work clothes, but somehow looking effortlessly put together, I felt that familiar jolt of attraction mixed with something deeper, something that felt dangerously close to falling. "Hi," he said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Hi." For a moment, we just looked at each other, both of us aware that being here together was a statement, a choice, a step forward into unknown territory. "So," Alex said finally, "have you thought about what you want to talk about?" "Everything. Nothing. The way you make me feel. The way you've turned my entire world upside down in less than 48 hours. I broke up with my fiancée last night." I said, the words surprised me as much as they seemed to surprise him. "Wait, had I? Is that what had happened with Sarah?" Actually, no, that wasn't true. But saying it out loud made me realize how much I wanted it to be true. "Sorry," I corrected. "That's not accurate. But I wanted to. I should have." Alex's expression grew gentle. "What stopped you?" "Fear, I guess. Fear of hurting her. Fear of admitting I've been living the wrong life. Fear of..." I gestured between us. "This. What about this scares you? Where do I even start?" "Everything. I don't know how to be with a man. I don't know if what I'm feeling is real or just curiosity or some kind of early midlife crisis. I don't know how to come out to my family, my friends, my co-workers. I don't know anything." Alex reached across the table and covered my hand with his. "You don't have to know everything right now, David. You just have to know what feels right in this moment. And what if this moment passes? What if I wake up tomorrow and realize I made a huge mistake? Then you'll deal with it tomorrow. But David, he squeezed my hand. What if you don't? What if this is exactly what you've been looking for your whole life, and you almost missed it because you were too scared to try? The possibility of that, of missing out on something real because I was too afraid to reach for it, was more terrifying than any of my other fears. Can I ask you something? I said, anything. When did you know that you were attracted to me? I mean, Alex smiled, and there was something almost shy about it. The second you walked into being there, you had this look on your face. Stressed, distracted, completely focused on getting your coffee and getting out. But when our eyes met, you just stopped, like the world had shifted slightly. It had. I know. I felt it too. He paused. I've been out for over 10 years, David. I've dated a lot of guys, but I've never felt anything like what I felt when I looked at you. The honesty in his voice, the vulnerability, made my chest tight with emotion I couldn't name. I'm scared, I admitted. I know, but being scared doesn't mean you shouldn't do something. Sometimes it means you absolutely should. We sat there for a long time, hands linked across a small table, talking about everything and nothing. Alex told me about growing up in a small town in Oregon, about the difficulties of coming out in a conservative community, about the relief and freedom he'd found in Seattle. I told him about my childhood, about the pressure I'd always felt to meet everyone's expectations, about the creeping sense that I'd been sleepwalking through my own life. And slowly, gradually, I started to understand what I wanted. Alex, I said as we prepared to leave, I need to end things with Sarah properly. I need to be honest with her about what I'm feeling, even if I can't fully explain it yet. He nodded. That's the right thing to do. And then, would you like to have dinner with me? Like a real dinner, a real date. His smile was brilliant. I'd love that. As we stood to leave, Alex stepped closer to me. David, yeah, whatever happens, I'm glad you walked into my coffee shop. So was I. For the first time in my life, I was exactly where I wanted to be. That evening, I called Sarah and asked if we could meet, not at my apartment or hers. Somewhere neutral, somewhere that felt appropriate for the conversation we needed to have. We met at Westlake Park, the same place where we'd had our first date 2 years ago. It seemed fitting, somehow, to end things where they'd begun. Sarah arrived looking beautiful as always, but I noticed a tension in her shoulders, the careful way she studied my face as I approached. This is about more than wedding planning, isn't it? She said without preamble. She'd always been perceptive. It was one of the things I'd initially found attractive about her. Her ability to cut through nonsense and get to the heart of matters. Yes, I said, it is. We found a bench overlooking the water. For a few minutes, we sat in silence, watching the ferries move back and forth across Elliott Bay. How long have you known? She asked finally. The question caught me off guard. Known what? That you don't want to marry me. There it was. The truth neither of us had been willing to say out loud. I didn't know until recently that I could put it into words. I admitted, but looking back, maybe part of me has known for a while. Sarah nodded slowly. I think part of me has known too. We've been going through the motions, haven't we? Planning this perfect wedding, this perfect life, but never really talking about whether it's what either of us actually wants. Sarah, I'm sorry. I never meant to hurt you. I know you didn't. She turned to face me fully. Can I ask you something? And will you promise to be completely honest? I nodded. Is there someone else? This was the moment. I could lie, make this about us and our incompatibility. Keep Alex out of it entirely. Or I could tell her the truth. Yes, I said quietly. But it's not what you think. What do you mean? I took a deep breath. It's a man. Sarah blinked, clearly not expecting that answer. A man. I met him a few days ago. I don't fully understand what I'm feeling or what it means, but yes, there's someone else, and he's a man. I watched Sarah process this information, saw the moment when understanding dawned in her eyes. Oh, she said softly. Oh, David, I know this is a lot to take in. I know it doesn't make sense. I've never been with a man before, never even seriously considered it. But something changed. Everything changed. We sat quietly for a moment. A young couple walked by, laughing and holding hands, completely absorbing each other, and I found myself wondering if Sarah and I had ever looked that happy together. "Are you in love with him?" Sarah asked, her voice surprisingly gentle. Was I, after 3 days, was it possible to be in love with someone? "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I think I could be," and that scares me because I've never felt anything like this before. Sarah was quiet for a long time, staring out at the water. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but sad. "You know what the strangest part is? I'm not even angry." "You're not?" "I'm hurt, obviously, and disappointed, but not angry." She turned to look at me. Because if I'm being honest, David, I've been feeling like we were forcing something that should have been natural. The relief I felt at her words was overwhelming. She understood. Maybe not completely, but enough. "I love you," I said, and I meant it. "Just not in the way you deserve to be loved." "I know, and I love you too, but..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "I think I've been in love with the idea of us more than with who we actually are together." We talked for another hour, working through practical details, the wedding venue, the deposits, the guests who would need to be notified. It was painful but necessary, and through it all, Sarah maintained a grace and understanding that made me realize how much I'd underestimated her. She deserved someone who would look at her the way I looked at Alex. Someone who would choose her not because she was perfect on paper, but because she made them feel alive. "David," she said as we prepared to part ways, "I hope he makes you happy, really happy." "Sarah, I mean it, and I hope someday you'll introduce me to him. I'd like to meet the man who helped you figure out who you really are." As I watched her walk away, I felt a complex mixture of sadness and relief. Ending our relationship was painful, but it was also the first completely honest thing I'd done in years. That night, I called Alex. "Hi," I said when he answered. "Hi, how are you?" "Single," I said, and then immediately felt terrible for being so blunt. I mean, I ended things with Sarah. We talked, and it's over. There was a pause on the other end of the line. "How do you feel?" Alex asked softly. "Sad, relieved, terrified, free." I laughed shakily, all at the same time. That sounded about right for a major life change. "Alex, yeah, that dinner invitation still stands. If you're interested, I'm very interested. Tomorrow night?" Tomorrow, in less than 24 hours, I'd be on my first date with a man. The thought should have been terrifying, but instead, I felt excited. Tomorrow's perfect. I spent the next day alternating between excitement and panic. What did one wear on a date with a man? What did we talk about? What were the rules? There were no rules, I realized. That was both the terrifying and liberating truth. Alex had suggested a small Italian restaurant in Capitol Hill. Intimate, he'd said, but not so intimate that I'd feel overwhelmed. When I arrived, he was already there, sitting at a corner table, wearing dark jeans and a navy button-down that made his eyes look even more striking. When he saw me, he stood up, and for a moment we both hesitated. Handshake? Hug? Kiss on the cheek? This was new territory for both of us. He solved the dilemma by pulling me into a warm, brief hug that felt perfectly natural. "You look great," he said as we sat down. "Thanks. So do you?" The first few minutes were awkward. We were both hyper-aware that this was a date, that we were in public together, that this was my first time doing anything like this. But as the evening progressed, the conversation flowed as easily as it had in the park and at the cafe. Alex told me about his work. He was studying to be a social worker while working at the coffee shop, passionate about helping LGBTQ plus youth navigate the challenges he'd faced growing up. I found his dedication inspiring, his commitment to making the world better for people like us. People like us. I was part of an us now. "What about you?" he asked as we shared a dessert. "What made you go into marketing?" I thought about it. Honestly, it was practical. Good money, stable career, something my parents would be proud of, But I don't think I've ever been passionate about it. What are you passionate about? No one had ever asked me that question. Not Sarah, not my parents, not any of my friends. What was I passionate about? I used to love photography. I said slowly. In college, I spent hours in the darkroom, developing film, trying to capture perfect moments. I was good at it, too. What happened to that? Life, I guess. Practical concerns. The need to make a living. I paused. Maybe I gave up on it too easily. It's not too late to pick it up again. The way he said it, with such casual certainty, made me believe it might be true. After dinner, we walked through Capitol Hill, past the late-night cafes and bookstores, the vintage shops and art galleries. The neighborhood had an energy that felt creative and accepting, full of people who seemed comfortable being exactly who they were. I love this area, Alex said as we strolled down Pine Street. It's one of the reasons I moved here. You can be yourself without apology. It feels different, I agreed. More alive. We found ourselves at California Anderson Park, sitting on the grass under the stars. The city lights created a soft glow around us, and the air was warm for a Seattle evening. This was the moment I've been both anticipating and dreading. The moment when we'd have to acknowledge the attraction between us. Decide how far to let this go? David, Alex said softly, can I ask you something? Anything. Are you okay with this? Being here with me? Because if you need to slow down or if this is too much. I looked at him, really looked at him. The gentle concern in his eyes. The way he was giving me space to be uncertain, to be afraid, to figure this out at my own pace. When had anyone ever been that considerate of my feelings? I'm more than okay with it, I said. I'm exactly where I want to be. Alex smiled, and then very slowly he leaned closer. Can I kiss you? This was it. The moment that would change everything. That would make this real in a way that conversation couldn't. Yes, I whispered. The kiss was soft, tentative at first, both of us aware of how significant this moment was. But as I relaxed into it, as I felt the warmth of his lips against mine, something inside me seemed to click into place. This was what I'd been missing. This feeling of rightness, of coming home to myself. When we broke apart, I was breathing hard, my heart racing with excitement rather than fear. Wow, I said softly. Alex laughed, and the sound was full of joy. Good wow or overwhelming wow? Definitely good wow. We kissed again, longer this time, and I felt years of confusion and uncertainty melting away. This wasn't curiosity or experimentation. This was recognition. This was my heart, finally admitting what it had always known. I was gay. I was attracted to men. I was falling for Alex. I should probably go, I said eventually, though I made no move to leave. Probably, Alex agreed, but he was smiling. David, yeah, I'm really glad you took a chance on that lavender latte. I laughed. Best coffee decision I ever made. As I drove home that night, I felt lighter than I had in years. The conversation with Sarah, painful as it had been, had freed me to explore this new part of myself. And my evening with Alex had shown me what it felt like to be with someone who truly saw and appreciated who I was. For the first time in my life, I wasn't pretending to be someone else. I was just being me. The next few weeks passed in a blur of coffee dates, long walks, and increasingly intimate conversations. Alex and I were taking things slowly, by a suggestion not mine. He understood that this was all new for me and that I needed time to process what I was feeling and learning about myself. But God, the attraction between us was overwhelming. Every touch, every glance, every moment of contact felt electric. When he held my hand as we walked through Pike Place Market, when he kissed me goodnight after our dates, when he looked at me with those warm, understanding eyes, I felt more alive than I ever had before. I also started making other changes in my life. I dusted off my old camera and began taking photos again, rediscovering the joy I'd found in capturing perfect moments. Alex was an enthusiastic subject, though he complained that I made him look too serious in the candid shots. You have this way of seeing people, he said one afternoon as we looked through my recent photos. Like you can see past all the surface stuff to who they really are. Maybe that's because someone taught me how to really look, I replied, and the smile he gave me could have powered the entire city. I also started coming out to the important people in my life. My best friend Mark took it surprisingly well, admitting that he'd wondered but had never wanted to pry. My sister was supportive but worried about how our parents would react. "They'll come around," she said during a long phone conversation. "They love you, David. They just need time to adjust their expectations." My parents were, predictably, more challenging. The conversation was awkward and painful, full of questions I wasn't ready to answer and concerns I couldn't immediately address. But they didn't reject me outright, which felt like a victory. "We just want you to be happy," my mother said finally. If Alex makes you happy, then we'll learn to accept it." It wasn't unconditional love and support, but it was a start. 3 weeks after our first official date, Alex invited me to his apartment for dinner. He cooked, something I'd mentioned wanted to learn how to do better. And we ate by candlelight, talking and laughing like we'd known each other for years instead of weeks. After dinner, as we sat on his couch sharing a bottle of wine, the conversation turned more serious. "David," Alex said, setting down his glass, "can I tell you something?" "Of course." "I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between us, loaded with possibility and risk. I looked into his eyes and saw a vulnerability there. Saw him offer me his heart with no guarantee that I was ready to accept it. But I was ready. Maybe I'd been ready since that first moment and been there. "I'm falling in love with you too," I said softly. The relief and joy on his face was beautiful. Really? I know it's fast, and I know I'm still figuring things out, but what I feel for you, it's not going anywhere, Alex. It's only getting stronger. He kissed me then, deep and passionate. And for the first time, I didn't pull away when things started to get more intense. For the first time, I let myself want him completely. What happened next was tender and overwhelming and perfect in ways I'd never experienced before. Alex was patient and gentle, guiding me through discoveries about my own body and desires that left me breathless and amazed. Afterward, as we lay tangled together in his bed, I finally understood what all the songs and movies and poems were about. This feeling of complete connection, of being known and accepted and cherished exactly as I was. "How do you feel?" Alex asked softly, his fingers tracing patterns on my chest. Like I'd been sleepwalking my entire life, and I just woke up. He laughed, the sound vibrating through his chest where my head was resting. "I love you," I said, testing out the words. They felt right. They felt true. "I love you too, David." As I drifted off to sleep in Alex's arms, I thought about how much my life had changed in just a few weeks. I'd ended an engagement, come out to my family and friends, and fallen in love with an incredible man who saw me more clearly than I'd ever seen myself. It had been terrifying and beautiful and exactly what I'd needed, even though I hadn't known I needed it. 6 months after that first day and being there, Alex and I were living together in a small apartment in Capitol Hill. I'd left my marketing job to freelance, giving myself more time to pursue photography seriously. Alex had started his graduate program in social work, and we found a rhythm that felt natural and right. Our apartment was full of my photographs, some of Alex, some of the city we'd come to love together, some of the LGBTQ plus youth Alex worked with who become like family to us. We hosted dinner parties for friends I'd made in the community, people who understood the journey I'd been on and welcomed me without judgment. I'd never felt more at home anywhere. One evening, as we sat on our fire escape watching the sunset over the city, Alex turned to me with that same warm smile that first caught my attention. "Any regrets?" he asked. I thought about it seriously. The past 6 months have been challenging in some ways. Coming out later in life meant navigating complexities that younger people didn't face. Some relationships have been strained. Some assumptions have been challenged. Some comfortable certainties have been destroyed. But regrets? No, none. I said firmly, not a single one. Not even about the lavender latte that started all this. I laughed, pulling him closer. Especially not about the lavender latte. As the last light faded from the sky, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. A chance encounter, a moment of recognition, the courage to question everything I thought I knew about myself. It had all led to this moment, this love, this life I'd never imagined but couldn't imagine living without. Sometimes the most important journeys begin with a single step into the unknown. Mine began with walking into a coffee shop on a Tuesday morning, and I'd never been more grateful for a decision in my entire life. And there you have it. David's complete journey from confusion to clarity, from living someone else's expectations to embracing his authentic self. This story proves that it's never too late to discover who you really are, and that sometimes the most unexpected encounters can lead to the most beautiful transformations. I'd love to know what you think about David's story. Have you ever experienced a moment of recognition like his first encounter with Alex? Have you had to find the courage to live authentically even when it meant disappointing others' expectations? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your story might inspire someone else who's on their own journey of self-discovery. If this story resonated with you, please consider giving a like and sharing it with someone who might need to hear it. Stories like David's remind us that love comes in many forms, and that the courage to be true to ourselves is always worth it, no matter how scary it might feel at first. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. Until next time, remember, sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with the simplest choices, like trying new coffee or walking into an unfamiliar place. You never know what might be waiting for you on the other side of that door.